Cool, cool. All right, so we have here, feel free to pull right up, Mr. Talib Kweli and Nico Case.
No, Immortal Technique.
Oh, more. Oh my God.
Exactly.
What's up, bro? Wow. Okay.
More to what Nico is.
Nico is.
Even though I like Nico.
So, as I said, Talib Kweli is somebody I've been listening to for a really long time, so this is an honor that you came out, man. Really appreciate you being here. And so what you're looking at right here is the 6th or 8th grade at Woodlawn School. All right, let's give Kweli and Immortal Technique a huge round of applause right now. So, to kick it off, I got some questions from some of my students. But before, if you just want to talk generally, like, where, how was it that you talk about your background, and how was it that you ultimately decided to jump into the rap game? Because I know, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but you went to school, you went to a good school, and yet you chose to go a different direction. So if you could talk a little bit about your background.
So y'all said 6th to 8th grade, right?
Yeah.
When I was your age, I was going through a lot of, peer pressure. When I was in 6th grade, my whole junior high school experience was me trying to figure out where I fit in with other kids. I was always good at school, in elementary school, I always got A's, and the teacher's pet and all that, and the parents and teachers loved me. When I got to junior high school, the influence that my peers had over me took over from the teachers and the parents. I started to care less and less about what my teachers and my parents thought. I started to care way too much about what my peers thought. I want to impress my fellow students. Now, that's part of the reason. I got good and bad out of that. The bad out of that is I started failing my classes. I started following, bad influences. I started not caring about my self-worth. I started undervaluing myself. But the good thing about it is I got into hip-hop because the school that I was at, everybody was into hip-hop. I wasn't into hip-hop at the time. Before that, when I was in elementary school, I used to write plays and poetry and all that. I used to write. And so when I got to junior high school, hip-hop became a way for me as a writer to be cool. It became a way for me to relate to other kids in my class. So I became a rapper when I was in junior high school. I would kick raps at the lunchroom table, with all my homeboys. And so by the time I got to 9th grade in high school, I definitely considered myself an MC and wanted to rap for a living. I wanted to play baseball. I was into marine biology as well, but hip-hop at some point took over for me in high school.
All right. Where did you go to school after high school? Because you continued your educational career after high school, yes?
I went to high school in Brooklyn Tech in Brooklyn. I was still on the path of following the wrong influences. So I wasn't going to school in 9th grade and I got kicked out. My parents, who were both educators, they were very upset that their son got kicked out of school. And I got sent away to boarding school in Connecticut. I went to a school called Cheshire Academy in Connecticut. It wasn't, like a disciplinary school, but it was just a boarding school. I was very privileged and blessed that my parents, worked hard and almost broke them to send me away to a boarding school. Most of the people in my neighborhood didn't get that opportunity. At boarding school, I turned my life around. I had good teachers there. It was 130 kids in the whole school. So teachers were able to give more individual attention to students. And I sort of got my life back on track. I went to NYU, I got out of boarding school, went to New York University to study theater. After studying theater at NYU for about a year, that's when I actually left college to get a job. I wanted to become a rapper. I knew I wanted to become a rapper. So I got a job at a bookstore, and I was going to clubs at night. I was going to Washington Square Park, honing my craft. But what's important is that I didn't just quit school and just not do anything. I quit school and I actively 24/7 participated in hip-hop. I went to every hip-hop show. I went to every open mic. That was around the time that I met this gentleman, Immortal Technique. We started our career at the same time. And I actively participated in a community of artists. If it wasn't for that community of artists, I couldn't do that. Now you have that community artist online. If you do music, you can go on SoundCloud, you can go on Bandcamp, you can meet other artists. But you know, back then it wasn't no online, so I had to actually go out into the world to meet other artists. And you know, I took it seriously. I took my hip hop as serious as I would take a 9-to-5, even more serious than I would take a 9-to-5, because when you make music for a living, you have to be your own boss.
Awesome. And so Immortal, man, I'm so glad to have you here. Pleasant surprise. Could you talk a little bit about your background and how you got into this?
My experience is slightly different. I wasn't born in the United States of America. I was born in a military hospital in South America. I came to this country when I was about 3 years old. And what was interesting is that in Peru, the country that I was born in, it suffered from a civil war practically and massive inflation. And for people who are very young and don't understand what inflation means, that means that the money you have in your pocket is literally worth nothing the next day. It means that this $50 is worth $50 today, but tomorrow that $50 is worth $5. And the next day your mother goes with this $50 to try to pay for food, and that $50 ain't worth $5 no more, brother. This $50 is worth $2, and then it's worth a quarter, and then it's worth nothing. And they went through 3 currencies in a year. That means your dollar is insignificant. It means that you have no buying power. And I began to realize that the things I had in America were things that people took for granted all the time, like water. You turn the faucet and water comes out. That's a privilege. In a lot of places, people don't have that. I heard hip hop for the first time because when I walked out my door, you didn't need a radio, you didn't need online to hear hip hop. There were people in the street, men, women, it didn't matter. If you were nice, people accepted you into the cipher. If you were garbage, they said, get the hell out of here. And they might beat you up too, because New York was a very violent city. Unfortunately, as a child, I went to a very good school, but I felt very misguided because I lived in Harlem, and while everyone in my school got to go home to a nice neighborhood, I went home to a neighborhood that was more problematic. There was a lot of drugs, there was a lot of violence. New York didn't have gangs at the time, but what it had at the time was crews, which means this entire block is run by a certain group of friends, and if we don't like you, you're not welcome over here. New York was also one of the most diverse, but yet the most segregated cities. So there was an area in Harlem that was for Puerto Rican people. And if you were not Puerto Rican, you were not welcome there. There was an area there that was for black people, and if you were not black, they would say, well, brother, you in the wrong neighborhood, sucker, and it would be it. There were areas that were just for Italians, there were areas that were just for Irish people, and that whole mysticism of diversity was very, very much blown up in my face. As a young man, I realized that I made a lot of mistakes because I believed that fighting was the answer to everything. And I used to get into fights all the time with people over nonsense. And I found myself incarcerated. I went to prison for about a year. I went to college first because I tried to do the right thing, but then I ended up in prison because I continually fought. But what surprised me was that there were people who were sitting there getting sentenced with me who had been in fights all the time. And yet I realized that everybody in this country breaks the law maybe 2-3 times a day, but they decide who they're going to enforce it on more. So they painted me as a criminal and they sent me to this very, very dark hole. And there I realized a lot of very difficult things about my life. I realized that no one goes to prison because you're tough. You know, the same way no one lives in the hood because you're tough. People just live in the hood because their parents are poor and the bank won't give them a loan so they can move out. There's nothing hard. It's not a rite of passage. It don't make you a man. It makes you a slave. If you read the Constitution of the United States, the document that provides the laws for the infrastructure of this entire country, slavery was never abolished, ladies and gentlemen. That's a lie. It was reserved for people that are convicted of a crime. Read the Constitution. It says there that if slavery is now reserved for the convicted felon, that means that when you go to prison, you become a ward of the state, which means you're property of the state. That's why the person who's in charge of a prison is called a warden. Now, when I left prison, I said, you know what? I can't blame anybody else for my problems. I have to be the one to fix them. The people that ruined my community are not going to be the ones to fix them, just the same way that a person who abuses you is not the person who's going to stop the abuse. You're the one who's going to stop the abuse, because the only way to get somebody off your back is to stand up straight. And I learned this very early in life. So I said that I'm going to stand up straight regardless of what it is. And I started writing rhymes when I was incarcerated because they threw me in a place called the Hole, which is a place I hope no one here ever ends up. You only get to see the sun once, a day for about 45 minutes. And through that little tiny slit hole, they used to pass little pieces of paper. They have people in prison called trustees. It means they've been there for so many years that the prison trusts them to not try and run away and escape. So this old Native American brother used to pass me pieces of paper while I was incarcerated and say, hey, I know you're gonna go crazy in there. People go crazy when they're alone. Mind you, I'm from New York, and it's the only state besides North Carolina where just last year they outlawed solitary confinement for children. That means that up until 2014, they still allowed people as young as y'all, because I teach in a prison now, and my youngest student was 12 years old, they allowed up to 2014 that young child to be thrown in a cell and not see the light of day except for 1 hour every day. I'm not telling you scary stories. I'm not trying to fascinate you. I'm telling you the reality of what my life was. That old man that gave me that piece of paper saved my life because he said, you can escape this prison here. You can create your own universe with everything that you write. You can create another universe. You can create another place for you to be. You can unleash your imagination. All those things you were scared to say about life, all those things that frighten you, they don't frighten you when you write. If you're scared of pit bulls, if you're scared of an abusive stepfather, if you're scared of people trying to kill or rob you, you don't have to be scared of them when you write because you decide what goes down on the piece of paper. You decide the destiny of what you write down. And so I said, you know what? This is what I want to do. I want to write the reality about what I see. So I started rapping. I started rhyming. I came out of prison. I started battling people. Very different than what you see today with people that rhyme with no beat. That way, I didn't even know my opponent. They would put people's names in a hat. Quan knows, he was there. They would pick people's names out of a hat, and two people would step up, and we would say the most disrespectful things to each other that you could possibly imagine. Somebody talk about somebody else's mother, somebody else's family, but the winner got a cash prize, and not only that, the most important thing is he got to perform at the next battle. So not only did you have to win the battle against other rappers, but then you had to win the battle against the crowd. Because if you got up there and you beat everybody and you got up there and your songs was garbage, New York City will boo you off stage. It's one of those rare cities where they have no patience for people. They won't even clap if you're talented. You know what I mean? I'm waiting for my man to get on. When will this person get off stage? Man, I'm waiting for my people to shine. Hardcore, very competitive. And I learned that people didn't want to hear excuses. People didn't want to hear empty rhetoric. They wanted to hear something that would amaze them, something that would blow their mind. So I got into hip-hop because of that, and I started writing, and not just writing hip-hop, but writing, short stories and stuff like that, too. And eventually led me a career in music. So here I am, peace.
Glad, man, amazing. I didn't know any of that, but that is an amazing story. I just want to give you a round of applause, man. All right, so let's see. Question for you guys. What do you have to say about people who think hip-hop is all like the stuff you hear on popular radio stations and that rap is just a dead cheat, is just a cheat in writing melodies?
Okay, well those are two slightly different questions. Let me ask you a question. How many people, show of hands, don't be scared, have ever heard of me or Immortal Technique? Okay.
Before Mr. Reiser started talking to y'all.
Yeah, that. Qualify that. That's beautiful. That's wonderful. I'm glad some of y'all know about what we do, and the majority of y'all, I would assume, do not. That's okay. I've been blessed to, in my career, have a song or two on MTV, BET. I've been signed to different major labels, but for the majority of my career, I've been an independent hip-hop artist. Immortal Technique, he could speak more to it, for his whole entire career has been an independent hip-hop artist. So this is our job, and we love to do it. But the world is not, the world of hip-hop doesn't just run, or is not just dependent on what corporate commercial hip-hop says it is. The world of hip-hop is what we say it is. So we are tonight in Portland at the Roseland Theater. We're going to sell it out. there's rappers that you hear on the radio that are gonna come here to Portland and not be able to sell it out, even though their records are played all the time. They might be more famous than us, you know, and that's great. But hip hop has never been just about the fame. And so what we do is, you know, there's sort of a group of hip hop artists that work independently on the tour circuit. We put out our music online. We just have our own websites, and I've really learned from watching other independent artists like Immortal Technique to be my own man, to be my own boss. I've had jobs, I've worked 9 to 5s before, but I never had to work as hard in my 9 to 5 as I had to work being an independent artist. And as far as you know, the creativity of it, hip hop is poetry. It's poetry set to music. It's in the canon of music that people of color have been making for a long time. Jazz, blues, rock and roll, you know, all of that. Soul music, funk, all of that.
Yeah, we just actually had the Obo Addy Legacy Project, which is a local project where we built the connections from West Africa, starting with the drum, and going all the way up to hip hop and showing how all that black music is all connected in one stream. So we know where you're coming from with that.
One of the things I learned about music and independent music is that radio is not about what's popular. It's not about what songs you like. It's just about numbers. It's just about business, and it's just about money. It has nothing to do with your taste in music. It has nothing to do with what you like. The songs that are on the radio are there so that more people can listen, and that way the radio station can charge more money for the people that advertise on the radio station. That's the bottom line. In the same way, when you go into a record store or any store, the advertisement, when they have a big advertisement for someone's album, that's not because that's the store owner's favorite artist. They paid to have that slot there. It's called co-op marketing. And I'll explain it to you very simply. Anytime you ever go to the supermarket, Walmart, anywhere with your mom or your dad, everything that's 3 feet to 5 feet high, the people who bought or who were selling that product had to pay extra money for it to be there. Why? Because they feel like you won't lean all the way down to pick up the bread you want or the juice you want. It costs more money to be here or here to be visible. In the same way that Kweli will tell you, it costs more money to be on the radio. Who's on the radio is not about who's more popular. It's who has $200,000 or $300,000 to launch a national campaign. There's a word you guys might want to look up because everybody has a phone, which is an interesting device because it has all the entirety of human knowledge on it, right? It has everything that ever has been taught to you in society, and yet people only use this to argue with strangers and share pictures of animals. It's true, but the reality is that there's so much information that's just available on Google. But there's a word I want you guys to look up called payola. And payola means that I pay you to do something, and under the table I give you money, and you'll do it so that it seems popular, right? That's how radio used to be, and to many degrees, that's the way radio still is now. So the people that you hear there, it's not because they're the most popular, it's not they're the best singer. One of you could be a better singer than half the people on the radio. One of you could be a better rapper than half the rappers on the radio, but you just don't have $300,000 to launch a national campaign to give the production or the program directors of all the stations the money to be there. So it's not just based on taste. I'm sorry to ruin that fantasy. The reality is that it's based on money in a lot of these instances. So a lot of my fans have found me because I gave away my music for free. I was involved in a lot of humanitarian efforts. In 2009, I used the proceeds of a record that I had called The Third World, and I went to Afghanistan, and I built an orphanage and a school with a group called Omaid International. And I went there myself so we could complete it because I felt like the music that me and Kweli make is bigger than just words. It's bigger than just trying to pretend that you're rich. Because most of the cars, as we all know, are rented, the jewelry are rented, the models really aren't friends with the rapper, they're just there to get a day rate of $1,500 and go home. It's a business, brother, sisters. It's a business. And the bottom line is that if you know the business, you can work in that business. Just like the rules of any game. If you don't know the rules of basketball, you don't know the rules of playing cards, you can't play with people. They'll kick you off the table. But when you know the game and you know the hustle, then you have a chance to win the game. That's all.
Right. Okay, so thank you guys for taking this time to do the Q&A. What we're going to do right now is we're going to dismiss classes one at a time. So we're going to go 6, 7A, 7B, 8. Okay, so you want to listen for your teacher's instruction. Let's give one more round of applause for the teacher.
We appreciate that y'all have enjoyed us, but it's really our honor and our pleasure to come and speak to y'all. We on tour, we don't get to do this all the time, and this gives us hope and motivation and inspiration to come and meet y'all. So give yourselves a round.
Teacher instruction on exiting. Go ahead, 6th grade is standing.
6, let's go.
Ladle. Yeah, it's still recording. Look. Hit this.
Time. You're gonna go